Greetings from LA, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I am very, very thrilled today because we are joined by a very special guest. This is someone that I have known for some time, talking about film and some specific filmmakers as well. We'll get a little bit into that over the course of this conversation, I hope. And just all around a wonderful cinema enthusiast and wonderful person. Please join me in welcoming to the channel Amy. Amy, welcome.
Oh, great to be here and greetings from San Francisco.
Amy,
So,
we oh yes, you are in Great San Francisco. How is the day there so far for you in
uh,
San Francisco?
it's good. It's a little bit overcast and getting a little chillier, but I'm inside with my, heater on. So I'm pretty comfy, but yeah.
And I want to say too, thank you so much. We have, I think we've been talking about film, I think for a number of years back,
Yeah.
and also in the YouTube, say live streams, you have joined in with comments and your. As well as video discussions and the like. So I want to say thank you so much. It's wonderful to be able to continue the conversation with you about cinema. And but this time, yes, face to face in this virtual world. So I want to just thank you very much for your time today. I'm looking forward to this immensely.
Likewise.
And so I think one of the places I think we can begin, which is one of the, I think one of the areas where I think you and I in particular started to talk a lot about uh, our favorite films and filmmakers, I think was the filmmaker David Lynch.
Mhm.
And I know, based on our discussions, that you are a very, very big fan and admirer of the works of Lynch throughout the entire body of his work, TV and film and music and otherwise. So, and I thought today it might be a good opportunity because I've always been a fan of Lynch works, and I thought, oh, wouldn't it be nice to speak with our dear friend Amy about David Lynch and the like. And so that was sort of the reasoning behind, well, one of many reasons behind our trying to get together today and talk about your own cinema journey. But if you don't mind, maybe we can talk a little bit about. Let's start with the specific filmmaker, David Lynch. And maybe if you wouldn't mind just sharing with us a little bit about how you first got into David Lynch films.
Yeah, sure. So my uh, kind of getting into David Lynch films was kind of an interesting journey because as I've shared with you a little bit and others, he kind of was kind of coming into my world and leaving my world and coming into my consciousness and leaving my consciousness. And I would kind of notice something he did and then forget about him for a while and then be like, oh, yeah, it's that guy who does kind of interesting stuff, David Lynch. And so I grew up in a small college town in Michigan and I'm sure, like many of your listeners, if you've lived in a small college town, sometimes movie theaters will run like midnight movies. And in the 70s, sometimes midnight movies, if they would become a cult movie, would just run over and over and over again. So, one thing I noticed in the 70s was that there was this film called Eraserhead that would just play at this theater like every single weekend. And, I was just a kid. So I just thought, well, maybe that's just what theaters do. But now, like as an adult, I realize how rare that is for like one movie to play like for years on end every
Mm,
weekend at a movie theater.
yeah.
And so I kind of heard of the word like cult movie. Um, but I think a lot of us, like when we're younger, we're kind of programmed to kind of just outright reject things if they're kind of different or
Mm,
weird or dark. And so, I was just, I think I remember some people saying, like, oh, yeah, that's a cult movie or that's a really weird movie. So I didn't really pay too much attention to it, but I did notice that it was playing at that theater a lot and like for years on end. And so that was one, thing that kind of went in my memory. And then another thing that made a really big impact on me was when Elephant Man came out. And I think I was like a teenager at the time, and I went with my family and we saw it in the theater. And, it's a very, beautiful black and white film. It's a very emotional story, but I was just incredibly moved by it, and, in a strange way, I really related with the main character because, at the time, I myself had been dealing with a lot of, like, really serious acne, which I just felt very, like, acne on my face, and I just kind of felt like, a freak, and, but of course, my situation was, much less dramatic than Elephant Man, but you know how when you're a teenager, everything just gets very highly dramatized in your mind, and so I just really got into the drama of that and, just the sense of isolation that he felt, and so I
Mm.
was just, like, very mu like, I remember crying very hard in that
Mm.
movie, and I'm not, like, a big crier in movies, and so that made, like, a really big impact on me, but, kinda, like, came and then it went, um, and then I moved to San Francisco, and, in I think it was 1986 is when Blue Velvet came out, and I went to see that with a small group of friends, and again, kind of what I was, talking about earlier, people will kinda just dismiss things if they're kind of weird or disturbing, and I think particularly women are socialized to, like, not be interested in those areas or that it's just not very feminine of you if you're, like, interested in, like, a dark mystery, where people are killed or, whatever. So, I had seen that with at least one other girlfriend, and I think there might have been, one, like, man there, but I think it was mostly, like, women, and so the other women that I was with kinda just outright rejected that, and, part of me was like, "Wow, this is, like, a really unique vision, it's real something really interesting is happening here," but at the same time, I was kind of disturbed by the content, and at that point, I wasn't, like, a cinephile, and so, I don't know, maybe, like, I kinda it caught my attention definitely, and I was like, "Okay, something really interesting is happening there," but I didn't, like, completely embrace, like, Lynch as a filmmaker, and at that time, I wasn't even really a cinephile, so it was kinda like, "Oh, yeah, that guy that made, Elephant Man that I really liked, or that guy that made Eraserhead." So it would kinda come into my consciousness and out, and then yeah, so then when Twin Peaks came, that was, like,
Mm.
another big, huge, like, social phenomenon, and I think at that point, I almost feel like Lynch was, like, a little bit ahead of his time with some of the other movies he had made where people just were not ready for his types of stories, and then I
Mm.
feel like when Twin Peaks came out, I feel like there was just this readiness in the world to accept those type of stories, and
Mm.
so, I got very, into Twin Peaks, and I actually remember that I had heard that this, TV show is gonna be made, excuse me, and, I was like, "Oh, yeah, that seems interesting because I liked, Blue Velvet, and I really liked The Elephant Man, so I'm gonna watch it," but I kind of forgot about it, and then,
Mm.
I remember it was specifically Palm Sunday, and that always made a big impression on me because the, premiere of it, because like, there's the story is about someone named Laura Palmer and the Palmer family, so that word "palm" is kind of embedded in that, so I don't know if that was purposeful or not, but
Oh, wow.
premiered on Palm Sunday, which is, like, April 8th, I think, and that's in exactly 1 week before Easter. So,
Wow.
also, if you just think of thematically, like, what Easter represents to people, I just thought
Yeah.
that was really interesting. But I turned it on,
Wow.
and I was, like, not even at the beginning of the show, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, it's that show, I wanna watch it," and I started watching it, and I think it was shortly before there's a scene where the detective Cooper is interviewing some people at the police station, and they're looking at a video of
Mhm.
Laura Palmer at the picnic. And remember, there's that zoom in on her eyeball, and you see like
Yes.
an image of a motorbike, and that's like a big clue in the story. So, anyways, when I saw that, I was just like, whoa, like that just like really grabbed me because I don't know if I'm sure you have seen this uh Daisuke, but that movie Blow Up by Antonioni, remember there's
Yes.
this thing about photographs and blowing things up and seeing more information, and so to me, that just brought me right back to that movie Blow Up, which I thought was amazing, and by this time too, I was, definitely becoming a little bit more of a cinephile. I was getting more into watching Hitchcock movies and things like that. So yeah, that was the thing where I was just like really captivated by that whole series. And then, as some people may remember, there was a bunch of interruptions in that series, like the Gulf War was going on, and they would like stop coverage for like the war coverage and like keep changing the day. Like sometimes it was on Thursdays,
Mhm.
but I think they moved it to Fridays or Saturdays or something. And then I think by the end of season one, they didn't even know if there was going to be a season two, and so Frost and Lynch created as many cliffhangers as possible to make people want to keep watching it. 'Cause, it's just like
Yeah.
an insane number of hangers. But yeah, and it
Yeah.
came back on, and everybody watched it, and then uh, the ending was kind of daunting, and but yeah, so I kind of got really into Lynch at that point, and then as many people know, like Lynch and Frost were forced to reveal who the murderer was, and then after that, Lynch kind of lost interest a little bit in Twin Peaks, and he went off to make Wild at Heart. And I saw Wild at Heart in the movie theater
Hmm.
too, but I didn't quite like it as much as the other things I had seen by him. I was very disturbed by the really horrifying looking teeth of Willem Dafoe. That
Oh,
movie, if
yes.
you
Yes.
remember, his teeth are really scary, and just like his character overall was really disturbing. It
Yes.
was just like, I don't know, it didn't really resonate with me at the time, that movie. And so, it was kinda like time was passing and, Lynch is not exactly like a highly prolific filmmaker, so it'll take him, like, years sometimes in between film projects. And then, I was busy with my life too, so I wasn't completely obsessed with cinema at that point as like I am now. And so the thing that, was really the game changer for me in terms of me just totally embracing David Lynch as one of the best filmmakers in the world, was Mulholland Drive, which I
Yeah.
saw in 2001. And I had kind of a funny experience watching that movie. I remember I kind of was sitting near the back of the theater, and there was these two people sitting in back of me, and it was kind of one of those annoying situations where one of the people keeps talking throughout the whole movie and like adding their thoughts about what's going on in it. And I had been told, or I had read somewhere before going to see it, that this movie was very confusing. And I was watching it and going like, well, this isn't confusing at all. I'm following the plot. Like, it's a little strange, but I'm not having trouble understanding it. And this was all before like the switch that happens near the end of the movie.
Hmm.
And then there was, that scene where like the two of the main characters come back to the house, and there's that blue box, and the blue box opens, and then, some characters vanish, and then the whole screen just went black. And it was like almost like 2 hours into the film, or maybe an hour and 50 minutes into the film, and everybody was like, "Is that it? Is that the ending?" Like, that's kind of like there's no credits, but it was a little bit of a logical end for the story, so that was kind of confusing, and we were just kind of sitting there, and I was mulling over what I had seen, and then the film came back on. I was like, "Oh, it's not over." So that was almost a little bit Lynchian, felt like that whole experience. And then it did become more confusing, and I walked out of the theater going like, "I have no idea what I just watched. I have no idea what that
Hmm.
movie is about, but, like, that was amazing, and I totally wanna keep thinking about it and keep, yeah, just exploring what this is." And so, that was kinda, and then I remember I went to go see that repeatedly at the theater too. Same thing happened also when Inland Empire came out. Like, I saw it, I think, about 13 times in the theater, because
Wow.
every weekend I would have this routine of, like, after work on Friday, I would go to a movie. And so, I would be like, "Well, I could see, these films, or I could see another David Lynch film." So, yeah, David Lynch wins, I'm going to that film. So even though I've seen it a bunch of times, I would rather go see a David Lynch film than just one of these other films from these other filmmakers. And, of course, also
Mm.
Inland Empire is another one of those movies that you could just think about forever, and it could have so many different, interpretations, and that was another one where after I saw it, I was like, "I have no idea what that thing is about," but I did find, like, the more I watched it, the more I could kind of make my own meaning or make my own theories of what was going on in it, so I think that's what I really love about Lynch's films too, is that he, definitely invites the audience in, at least from my
Mm,
perspective. Maybe not everybody feels that way, and I should also say that, of course, Lynch is very much an acquired taste and not for everybody, but I feel like people that get into him tend to get really into him. So, yeah, that's
yeah,
just a little overview
that's
on some of my and yeah, oh, one other thing I would should add too is that one thing that
please.
maybe made my interest in Lynch even stronger was just, at this time, the internet was kind of taking off too, and so I
Yeah.
had joined some internet groups that were like Lynch related, where I got to meet other Lynch fans. And first I just knew them online, but then I met several of the people in person, and sometimes we would have these things called meetups in Los Angeles, actually, and go to like some of the filming locations and things like that, or just meet
Cool.
up and hang out. Um, and then there was also I found out about the Twin Peaks Festival, where
Yeah.
it used to be in North Bend, where they shot part of the series, and there would be people from the show that would come, and you know, producers and people behind the show, but also a lot of the fans. And then there was like a tour of the location. So it just, it made the experience even more heightened because it brings your own real life into a little bit into the world of these films and these TV shows.
Oh, that's really great, Amy. That's really wonderful. You said so much there. I just want to say before I forget, I want to just applaud you for Inland Empire 13 times, you said.
Yeah,
That is great. I saw it 3 times in the theater when it was initially released, but 13, my goodness, that is very impressive. I am very impressed with that. That's amazing.
and of course, I've
And
seen it many more times at home too. So
yes, yes. So it's had a number of releases since then, that's for sure. Um, and as you say, it's a very enigmatic work, and I love how you describe it. It welcomes the viewer in terms of the possibility of interpretation. And that I think is very true for many other Lynch works, definitely.
mhm.
And I also want to say thank you so much too, because you mentioned a number of details about, among other things, for example, the Twin Peaks, uh, the
Festival.
broadcast. Yeah, well, yeah, there's the festival, yes, but there's also
Yeah.
the broadcast. And you had mentioned some
Oh,
details
yeah.
which I'd never realized about Palm Sunday. And
Mhm.
there's a little link between, perhaps, who knows, between that and as you mentioned, a very key character name, which is Palmer, as well
Yeah.
as aspects of it during the time, right? This was during the 19 right early 1990s, so a lot of things were going on. So there's a lot of context in terms
Mhm.
of the broadcast history that it's not always clear for people, or it's always good to have that kind of a reminder of when this was originally introduced to the world. Um, upon its initial broadcast. So this is really wonderful. Could I ask too about just following up on Lynch? What were, let's see, when you said, as you said before you had uh, encountered the film Mulholland Drive, you said
Mm.
that you had seen other Lynch works and that he came and went, to borrow your phrase, which I think is really a great way of describing it. It had an interest at the time, but then it sort of receded in the background for other things. But then when Mulholland Drive came about, that really something clicked. So I
Mhm.
wonder then after that moment, and then you became more, say, say you were watching more and more of his works. How then did you see, or did you then rewatch some of his earlier works that you had seen, like Blue Velvet or Elephant Man or Eraserhead, as you mentioned? And if so, how did this new outlook on Lynch works post Mulholland Drive for you? How did that reflect in your rewatching of these earlier works that you had seen before?
Yeah, well, I definitely, I think around this time I had started, buying DVDs and Blu-ray. I can't remember when Blu-rays came out, but yeah, I had started a movie collection anyways at home.
Mm.
And I actually remember before this too, before Mulholland Drive, I think I even had, when people had VHSs and they could get like two VHS machines and tape, they could rent a video and then get a blank tape and make a copy. Did you ever do that?
Oh yes,
Anyways,
so the
I
yes, the tab on the right, something like,
yeah.
yes,
So I
yes,
actually, like, had a membership at a video store back in the day, and I remember renting it and actually making a copy of Blue Velvet. Like, that's how much it impressed me. So even though I didn't watch it a lot, um, yeah, so I definitely did go back and rewatch a lot of the films, and I almost, like, started watching, like, at least 1 a week or something. I would just revisit them.
wow.
Like, on Friday, I'd be like, "Okay, which film do I wanna revisit now? Which film," and I could literally watch them over and over. So I think, a little bit, um, with my own personal evolution with films, I was kinda talking about earlier how, like, people are kinda socialized, especially women, to kinda reject things with a darker theme maybe, or like a theme that has more violence to do with it, or more people kinda just wanna dismiss that and be like, "Well, it's unpleasant, so it's not good for me, so I should stay away from it mentally." And so, I was kind of looking for, because I know that Lynch has talked a little bit about lightness and darkness, and how, like, darkness is really nothing, like, if you shine a light on it, it goes away.
Hmm.
And basically, like, with the darkness, you can really appreciate the light. So it's maybe that's what draws people in, or some people in, or maybe people who have, which, I'm sure most of the people on the planet have experienced some level of trauma or some level of darkness, and so they can kinda see that this darkness helps them appreciate, um the lighter moments. I don't know. But anyways, one quote that I found of his that I had actually used recently in some writing I had done was, he was saying that, we all have at least two sides. The world we live in is a world of opposites, and the trick is to reconcile those opposing things. I've always liked both sides. In order to appreciate one, you have to know the other. The more darkness you can gather up, the more light you can see too. So I don't know, I feel like his films have that, and his TV shows have that to a large degree. Like, there'll be scenes where people are laughing, but then suddenly it becomes very serious or sad at the same time, or, like that combination of, you don't know, like, the audience can't figure out if they should laugh or cry because he's presenting something with so much light and darkness wrapped up in it and kind of interwoven, that you don't know what
Wow.
to do. So I kind of felt like, to me, to get really deeply into something, or into some topic, or into some theme, you have to have, if it doesn't have any darkness in it, it's only gonna go so deep, I guess. So I
Wow.
guess that's kinda what drew me into his stuff, and like other, filmmakers that go into kind of dark areas like Cronenberg, or, Kubrick or Hitchcock. They have, like, elements of humor, but they have, like, elements of disturbing parts of humanity as well.
Yeah. I really, wow, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. This is something that you're absolutely right in terms of that type of approach to, say, the details of the Lynch aesthetic. Because as you say, again, I don't want to maybe go into too many specific plot points again for the benefit of those who have not yet seen some of these works. But for example, let me try to be as vague as possible. But I think you might know what I'm referring to, which is there are some scenes in some works where a character is seen to be smiling or laughing, which as one intuits, smiles or laughter can be generally regarded as being a kind of warm, or something of a kind of laughter, or emotional happiness of some sort, right?
Yeah.
Whereas in some scenes in Lynch's works, or Frost Lynch, there might be moments where a character is laughing, and then it could be the most frightening, dark thing in the world, which is, and as you say, it's wrapped up in a single moment. And it makes one wonder, right? How should we react to this? Or
Yeah.
perhaps we don't even have to think about how we think we are expected to react. Maybe we should just follow a more direct, intuitive, subjective approach and just react how we
Yeah.
personally react to it first, which is very liberating, I think, from the perspective of a viewer.
Yeah. Or to, to add a counterpoint, even in some of the scenes, like where people are crying really hard, it goes so over the top that it becomes humorous. Like in the scenes in uh, Twin Peaks when the parents first learn of their daughter's death, the mom is crying so hard that, like, I don't know, maybe when I first saw it, I didn't find it funny, but like on repeat viewings, I'm like, oh my God, like it's a little bit funny because it's just so over the top and melodramatic.
Yeah, that's really a great point because then one thinks when one laughs at a moment like this, it's not like, and there's a kind of knee-jerk reaction that is very tempting, at least from my viewpoint, which is, oh, how do I make, should I feel bad about this? Or, I'm laughing, but it's regarding a character that's going through, understandably, a really horrific moment. But
Yeah.
it's not quite that way in terms of this type of social construct, right? In terms of I should withhold my laughter. No, on the contrary, it seems to go hand in hand. The laughter seems to go hand in hand with that moment of a deep and quite significant distress. And there's nothing, I don't think, incongruent about it. It's actually quite natural, which is a very liberating notion. And as you say, it goes hand in hand with light and dark. They seem to go hand in hand in very specific moments at the same time.
Mhm.
Yeah, that is a great observation.
Yeah, I feel like people can feel like afraid of the darkness or avoid it, but like if you can learn to kind of not be afraid of it or go into it, like maybe it makes you feel more empowered and
Huh.
less helpless about things. I don't know.
That is fantastic. Yeah, that you're absolutely right too. There is something and as you say, to borrow the phrase that you mentioned earlier in discussion of Lynch's writing, shining a light on something makes it less less intimidating, or it
Mm.
brings more information. The sunlight or the shining a light. It's
Yeah.
exactly, yeah. That is incredible, and then that kind of perspective, among other perspectives, could really go into one's viewing of, say, a work by Lynch or Frost and Lynch. Definitely.
Mhm.
Oh, that's absolutely brilliant, Amy. Oh my goodness. Before we move on to say some other filmmakers as well, because I do want to touch upon some other filmmakers which you've mentioned, but still speaking a little bit about Lynch. What are your comments or thoughts about some of the other works? I know you mentioned a number already, like Wild at Heart, or
Mhm.
Elephant Man, or Eraserhead, Twin Peaks, Blue Velvet. What are some of your and Inland Empire? What about some of the other works, like let's say The Straight Story, Lost Highway, etc. What are some of your feelings or reactions to those works?
Um, I love all these works. I know that the straight story, like Lynch has always said that that was kind of Mary Sweeney's baby. So, like, he was married to Mary Sweeney, his editor, for a time, and they had a child. And she, I think, was from Iowa or wherever that movie is set. And so I think maybe she had written the script or had a big influence on it. So it doesn't have quite the same number of like abstract qualities as a lot of his other films has. It's more of kind of like a straight story, literally a straight story. And the character, it's not like confusing at all to understand what's happening with the characters, but there is some kind of like surreal Lynch-esque moments. My favorite line from that film is when a character is panicking. I think it's the Sissy Spacek character, and she's like, or no, I can't remember. And no, it's a different character. But anyway, somebody's panicking because somebody is ill, and someone's like, "What's the number for 911?"
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah,
my favorite from that movie. But yeah,
yeah.
no, I enjoyed that movie, and it's kind of funny to think that that Lynch actually made a movie with Disney. the Disney company
Yes, yes,
in
that's
charge of
right.
that.
That's right.
So that's kind of funny. And I have some, friends that are Lynch fans where that is their favorite movie. But to me, I tend to gravitate more towards the movies that have more abstractions in them. And to just touch briefly on Lost Highway, when I first saw Lost Highway, I think I believe I saw it before Mulholland Drive on video or something, and that was fun to see it on video because there's a whole thing about a video cassette in that movie too. But um, that one I kind of like couldn't really piece together what was happening, and
Mm.
I think this was before the internet had really taken off, so I couldn't, like, look online to see what other people were talking about, so I kinda just forgot about it for a while. And then when I saw Mulholland Drive and did a bunch of reading about it and formulated a lot of my own theories about it, it actually, helped me really understand Lost Highway a lot better because I think in some ways they have a similar, story structure going on where, like, one character is kind of having some wish fulfillment issues and then
Mm,
goes back to
mm.
reality. Yeah, so I think, like, I kind of see, like, Lost Highway as a male male point of view story, and then Mulholland Drive is a female point of view story.
Mm,
And, oh, the
interesting.
other thing too that I wanna say about Lynch is, like, the tagline for Inland Empire was, "A woman in trouble."
Yes.
And you could take that tagline and actually, stick it onto a lot of his movies. A lot of his movies are about a woman in trouble, Blue Velvet,
Interesting.
about a woman
Yes.
in trouble. I guess not Elephant Man, but yeah, some of his other movies definitely have
Yes.
women in trouble in them, so
Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. Yes,
yeah, that
definitely.
is a woman in trouble. Wild at
Inland
Heart
Empire. Yeah, well, Inland Empire you mentioned, obviously, yes, but Wild
and
at Heart,
Oil
yes, to a certain degree.
that has
Yes.
some women in trouble. There's
Yes,
several
yes.
women in trouble in that movie.
That's right.
Uh,
Oh,
yeah.
this is
So,
great.
I mean, I
This
just
is
feel yeah. So I think that he, even though he's like a man, he does do a really great job of kind of looking at the inner world of women and kind of exploring, for some women, like, what dangers that entails, that
interesting.
experience.
That is really interesting. Oh, thank you for much for sharing. I never really thought of the comparison of Lost Highway and Mulholland Drive in those terms until you mentioned it just now. But that really is a fascinating approach to those two films. Oh, that's great. I'm gonna have to watch them back to back now to get that further perspective from. Oh, this is really wonderful. I'm
Yeah.
learning so many new things.
I haven't heard about that. I haven't heard a lot of people say that, but for me anyways, it really just helped me understand the logic of it. Like,
Wow,
it helped me put together my own theory, like, "Oh, that is kinda similar to what's happening in Mulholland Drive, but with this character."
wow, that's a
Yeah,
wow. And because right because of the way that the shifts, certain
yeah.
shifts or certain say, yeah, let's call them
Like
shifts
we were
occurred.
talking
Yeah,
the other day about kinda like the fluidity of, identity, and so I
yeah.
think, yeah, you see that in Lost Highway, you see that in Mulholland Drive, you definitely see that in Inland Empire. I remember I was talking to one friend who's another big Lynch fan, and he was saying that in his mind, the main character of Inland Empire is consciousness. So,
Wow.
like, kind of moving around, jumping around from person to person.
Wow, that's it. And then another thing too about that, if that's the case, there's a case to be made about how that is a kind of shared experience,
Mhm.
which I think is really wow, I love that. That is so kudos to your friend for that wonderful observation.
And
And
also
to you for the yes, please, I'm sorry, please
yeah,
go
oh,
ahead.
and
Yes.
to say, in the context of David Lynch and his very profound interest in meditation and transcendental meditation, of course, consciousness is like a really important topic for him. So it kind of makes sense that he would make a movie, where consciousness plays such a big role, I guess.
Thank you very much for that. Yes. Yes, it's that is a very important reminder of a kind of placing his works in even further context. You're absolutely right. Oh, this is so fantastic. Oh, and also, I'm sorry, let me just to be also, I forgot to mention, what is your response to other works like, let's say, Dune
Mhm.
and Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, and then also The Return, Twin Peaks The Return?
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, Dune, I initially didn't really like because I wasn't I had never read the Dune books, and I don't know. Like, I think it's kind of a longer movie, right? I don't even remember if I saw it in the theater, but I just felt like, again, kind of the same critique that I have for Straight Story is it's not as abstract. So it was like a little less interesting to me. I mean, there was some cool moments for sure in Dune, and I really like the cast of Dune, and like they have Sting just show up, and Brad Dourif is
Right, that's
great,
right.
and yeah, and there's definitely I feel like there's some stuff about meditation in Dune as well that he kind of interwove in there. So like, yeah, I like Dune okay, and I still like David Lynch's Dune now and the new Dune that came out by I can't remember the name of that other guy.
Oh, Denis
The
Villeneuve, yes.
yeah, yeah, Dennis Villeneuve.
Yeah,
So both those Dunes are great. They're both very different. And
yeah.
I know that Dune is something that Lynch has talked about where he says it's his least favorite movie because he wasn't able to get Final Cut. So he gave away his rights for Final Cut for that movie, and then he was like, that's when the heartbreak began. And he was like, basically, he was never going to do a movie again if he did not get Final Cut. So I don't know what his Final Cut version would have looked like. But, anyways, so in some ways, I kind of don't take it as seriously as the other films because he's said that and he feels like it's not really a true representation of his vision of how he wanted the movie to be, I guess. So there's that one. And then Fire Walk with Me.
Yes, please.
Um, Again, when I saw it, maybe just because I was more into the kinda kooky, funny things in Twin Peaks season 2, it was a little bit jarring, and I know a
Mm,
lot of people had the same experience where they were because they had experienced all of season 1, all of season 2, and then there was a gap for several years, and then Lynch came out with this prequel, and I guess, in season 1 and season 2 the abuse that Laura is getting is a little bit more vague, whereas, like, in Fire Walk with Me, it's much more in your face and kind of,
yeah,
disturbing.
that's right.
So, I
Yes.
was pretty disturbed by it, so I was kind of in one of those moods where, that's all I could focus on, and so I kinda wanted to just put it out of my mind for a while. But,
Mm,
like, in subsequent years and, like, after I got really into Mulholland Drive, I was able to kind of watch it again with a new set of eyes and have a much greater appreciation of it, and,
mm,
I think also what I had mentioned to you the other day is, like, earlier in my life, I wasn't as experienced of a cinephile and movie watcher, and so, like, after you've lived a certain number of decades and seen, a few thousand films, uh, the way that you see films kinda changes, and so sometimes you'll see a lot of storytelling in films that are very similar and are not really that unique and that creative, and so after a certain number of decades, when you come across somebody as unique and special as David Lynch and what he puts out in his films, like, the greater appreciation you have for it. But
yeah.
yeah, and you're just like, "That like, you're never gonna see that again," or, "That is just, like, very a unique perspective on this," or yeah, so, that was my feeling about that.
And then The Return. Sorry, yes. Sorry
Yeah,
to go all over the place. I apologize.
yeah, that's okay. The Return I absolutely loved. I've seen this, I don't know, like, a whole bunch of times at home. I wish that it had been allowed to be nominated for, like, Best Picture, because the year that that came out, I think that should have won the Best Picture because it basically is, like, just a 17-hour-long movie or 18 hours, however long it is. Um, I know they showed it for a while at MoMA. Like, if I had lived in New York, I would have gone to all those screenings, and I think they showed it over the course of, like, 3 or 4 days or something.
Wow.
So yeah, I love to just watch those episodes over and over, and I kind of feel that The Return contains many elements that Lynch has gone into and explored in his previous movies. So there was like part of The Return that reminded me of Eraserhead, and there was some parts of The Return that
Yes.
reminded me of Blue Velvet, and there was some parts of The Return, that reminded me of Lost Highway. So, and even like the cast that like Naomi Watts, Laura Dern, like other actors that he's worked with, he brought in to that show. So, besides
Yes.
just the Twin Peaks actors. So yeah, I think The
Yes.
Return is amazing, and, like, there was the recent, documentary called Lynch Oz where John Waters is interviewed for a while, and he says, like, The Return is one of his favorite things that Lynch has ever done, and I'm kind of in the same boat. Like, it's hard for me to just pick one thing that's my favorite, but lately I've been thinking a lot about The Return.
Oh, uh wow, that's wonderful. That is wonderful. Yes, I too have similar feelings of enthusiasm for the return, for the reasons, for example, that you've stated here so wonderfully. And I do think, among other things, too, it is, as you suggest, a type of also a collection of things that we have maybe seen in earlier works, but also these sorts of revisitations are done in a way that's also so unique and so wonderfully the return's own character and style, yet
And it doesn't
recalling
feel
things
like
of the
he's
past.
and it doesn't feel like he's just copying himself to be lazy
No,
or anything. He's
yeah,
and I don't think he did anything like that on a conscious level. It was
yeah.
just like he's just still working through these ideas in his head, and they're still coming out.
Yeah, totally. I definitely well said. Absolutely well said, my friend. And you have already you have shown. I mean, obviously, uh, you are a very big enthusiast for cinema, and you have had your own cinema journey, which, as you described, the works of Lynch played a very important role, and they still do as you continue to explore them, as you've stated so very well. But also, I just want to say too, before I just want to say that you've mentioned other filmmakers. We've talked about them before, but also you mentioned them earlier in this conversation. So,
Mhm.
also, if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to hear some of your other uh, cinema journey stops along the way. I think, if I recall correctly, you had mentioned Hitchcock and Kubrick as well, and Cronenberg as well. But what are some of the other films or filmmakers during your own cinema journey, let's say, that that really meant something, or that were really important milestones for you in your own cinema journey, film enthusiasm?
Mhm. Well, yeah, definitely Hitchcock was the person that first got me really kind of excited about movies or cinema, and I remember even, like, watching Hitchcock films, like, at home, and my parents would also get really into them, like, especially my mom, and so sometimes, they were like these, um, positive, like, family experiences too with
Yeah,
my
yeah,
parents. Um, and yeah, I think I almost feel like some people get really interested in art or cinema, um, if, like, their parents are kind of, like, a little bit too preoccupied, and I almost felt like cinema was like another parent for me that brought me up a little bit. So, and I
wow,
feel like the works of, like, Hitchcock, you know how, like, he would come on his own TV show, like Hitchcock Presents, and he just struck me as this kind of very, like, fatherly figure, like, gentle, very polite, but in control of things, and that, you were gonna be well taken care of, like, with the Hitchcock, he was gonna let you have a little fun, like a roller coaster ride or something, but you were gonna land safely and be okay
yeah,
at that. So, like, I almost feel like I was drawn a little bit to certain filmmakers like Hitchcock and also Stanley Kubrick, because you just feel like you're dealing with somebody that is so confident in their own vision and so expert in what they do that you're gonna spend some time with them on their piece of artwork, but you're gonna be well taken care of, and they might teach you some things too that maybe a parent would teach you.
Uh, that is really interesting about cinema and right, kind of upbringing over time. That's really interesting. And oh yes, I do want to say too. We had spoken earlier the other day, and you had said something. Yeah, everything you said was great, but but for example, what you had said there, and if you don't mind, let's. I'd like to ask you this again. You had said, if you remember, about how sometimes if you feel down or if you feel a bit blue about the world and things that are going on in the world. Do you remember what you said in Stanley Kubrick films?
Yeah, I just watch a lot of Stanley Kubrick films, or maybe just Hitchcock films, just like somebody who is excellent at what they do. Because I feel like there's so much going on right now in the world that is not excellent. It's like the opposite of excellent. And so even though like a lot of people might not think of the Kubrick films as feel good films, like Clockwork Orange is not exactly, like a fluffy, soft film that's going to make
Mm.
you know, but there's just something about those films, and I don't know, I guess it's just like his expertise, or he's having you go into this world, and there's going to be like some things that are funny, but that are interesting, but that are poignant. And I think it was just like his expertise and his confidence and his level of excellence. And so sometimes you just feel like, I don't know, like sometimes I just feel like I'm surrounded by idiots. That's like a very snobby thing to say, but I just feel like when you're in the company of like a filmmaker like that, that's so intelligent and that is so caring and so perceptive, it just kind of restores my faith in humanity.
That's very interesting. Yes, that's that's very interesting indeed, especially this kind of juxtaposition as you refer to in terms of Stanley Kubrick films are not necessarily what I might think of per se in terms of what would be a quote unquote feel good movie per
Hmm.
se. But but actually there are, I mean, and I understand your perspective here about a kind of a capturing of something that is of a certain level of achievement and accomplishment in terms of a body of work, which I think is very important. One of the great, I think, appealing factors for many cinema enthusiasts. But also, well, I was very struck by that too, because it really got me thinking about how, in fact, actually, yes, Stanley Kubrick works at very key points anyway, could be said to be very much filled with a sense of optimism, I think, and a sense
Hmm.
of possibility, which is maybe in the face of some kind of dire or severe adversity, but there are moments, I think, quite, and I'm going to use this word on purpose, quite shining moments of optimism, potentially speaking, anyway. That I think is, and I really want to just thank you for that. It really helped me to reconfigure my further thoughts about the works of Kubrick. But then you mentioned also Hitchcock as well. And what are some of the other filmmakers or other films that you would say would be very important to you in your own personal cinema journey? I mean, so far, I mean, this is wonderful, wonderful. But as you know, film is like a vast ocean.
Yeah,
So many films to watch. So, what are some of the other great examples for you?
I mean, there's like so many. I don't even know who to like. I really like the Coen brothers.
Yeah,
I really like. Um,
Coen Brothers. That's a great
I've
example.
really been interested in that Japanese director that did the Cure lately. So I
Oh,
always.
Kurosawa, Kiyoshi Kurosawa. Yes, yes.
Kinda like what I was saying before, like, I think sometimes filmmakers are a little bit ahead of their time, where people will just see their stuff and be like, "I don't get it," or just reject it, and then later they'll there's, like, the consciousness of humanity or what we get, like, we would become more sophisticated viewers or are more open-minded about, viewing certain types of storytelling, and then we're, like, receptive to it. So I feel like
Yeah.
now people are more receptive to those, especially when they also are re-released on physical media. Like I think there was just the re-release of Lost Highway on 4K from Criterion,
Yeah.
and then I don't know if Cure has a 4K release, but they have a Blu-ray release, and it seems like lately there's been a little more conversation about Cure too.
Oh, the Kurosawa film. Yes, yes, that's right. Oh, that's so Kurosawa's Cure. As you mentioned too, you referred to, yes,
Yeah.
they both
Oh,
have Criterion
also,
releases. Oh, yes, please, please.
sorry, I forgot. I was
Okay.
also going to mention lately I've been watching or rewatching some of the Adam Egoyan films,
Thank you.
which
Yeah.
some people have kind of compared a little bit to Lynch in some ways because his
Hmm.
stories can have like different characters and you're not really sure how they're related, but then later on in the movie there's some connection, and his movies can also kind of be like little puzzles where you're trying to
Yeah.
figure out what's going on, and you'll see, like a scene
Yeah.
that's a flash forward or a jump back, and then be trying to put together all the pieces. So it's kind of similar to
Yeah.
Lynch. And then I had never heard about the movie The Sweet Hereafter until I was in one of these Lynch website groups, and somebody had mentioned it, that there was a lot of similarities between The Sweet Hereafter and Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. And so I recently
Oh, okay.
rewatched that, and I was just totally blown away. And I was
The
also,
Sweet Hereafter. I'm sorry. This is the Adam McGoyan film, Sweet Hereafter. That was
yeah,
with Sarah Polley and Ian Holm.
yes.
Um, and also, I think we had talked a little bit, or you had commented too, about your recent watch of the film, the other Adam McGoyan film. I think a little bit earlier,
Exotica.
Exotica. Yes, that's right. Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
that's.
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, and so you have this notion or this
So just
observation about
yeah,
puzzles. Yeah,
yeah,
and
and definitely both filmmakers kind of explore like sexuality and also
yes.
just like um people's problem, like I think both filmmakers, I know there in Lynch there's a lot of scenes that pertain to like jealousy, like sexual jealousy or feeling impotent or something like that, and I think that there's a little bit of that in the Adam Egoyan films too.
Hmm.
uh, the one thing that to me makes certain filmmakers more masterful, like Kubrick and Hitchcock and Lynch, is that they are all like especially good at keeping me like hooked into the story by creating a sense of dramatic tension and
Hmm.
suspense. Like, of course, Hitchcock was known as the master of suspense, whereas Adam Egoyan films can kind of be like a little bit slower and more meandering, and so I kind of have to be in a little bit more of a patient mood. And I, of course, like film is subjective, so there might be people that completely disagree with me on that and find the Adam Egoyan films riveting, and they can't take their eyes away from them. But I just feel a little differently about that. But I still appreciate, his films and how he creates them, and I also think he has a
Hmm.
very unique type of vision and process.
Oh, that's yes, of course, of course. As you say, Phil, it's a subjective process. So,
Hmm.
we have certain reactions to some works, and then other reactions to others. That's very fair. Yes, of course. So, but oh, this is really wonderful, Amy. Absolutely wonderful. Um, and I guess maybe in sort of the closing moments of this, I mean, I think we can go on for a long time. At least I could, because this is really quite wonderful. I know that you're very busy, so I don't. But maybe in the closing moments, I could ask you, what are some of the films that maybe you're planning to watch over the next few days, or are you interested in something that's on your radar? Maybe things you've seen before you want to rewatch, or new films that you haven't seen yet, or what are some things that are in the queue, as it were, for
Yes.
you?
Well, I recently just watched the new Sofia Coppola movie. Yesterday I saw Priscilla, and then the day before that I saw the new Todd Haynes movie, May December. And
Oh yes.
interestingly, they're both playing at the same theater in San Francisco, and they both deal with like inappropriate sexual relationships between like a much older adult and then a much younger person.
Hmm.
Um, they were both very interesting. I liked both of them, but I wouldn't say, like, I loved both of them, but they're, like, interesting to think about. Yeah,
Hmm.
and so the May December, I guess, is based on a real story of, like, an older woman that got involved with a 7th grader, and then she got prosecuted, sent to jail, and was released, but then they got married and had kids. And so, this actress comes to visit them who's, like, supposed to portray the woman played by, Nicole Kidman, and then the young actress is, what's her name? Natalie Portman.
Mm.
Yeah, so that was interesting. I heard, like, some guy in the theater who works there saying he saw it 5 times and he loved it, but, like, I didn't have quite that reaction. And then Priscilla is, like, we recently had the Elvis, um, biopic by Baz Luhrmann, and so this
Yes.
offers just, like, the different perspective from Priscilla's perspective.
Mm.
Um, and it's one of the only movies I've seen where it really just shows Elvis as kind of a creep for, like, approaching this 14-year-old girl, like, it's kind of like there's
Mm.
nothing, like, too, graphic, but it's just kind of the whole idea that he would be okay with inviting this 14-year-old girl over to his house at a party is kinda creepy.
Oh,
So, like,
this
the
is
first
the Sofia Coppola work?
Yeah, so everybody's kind of always idolizing or looking up to Elvis as this god, and so it kind of shows a little bit of a different perspective, and it doesn't demonize him or anything, but it just kind of shows him as more of, like, a mortal, real person.
Oh, okay, okay. And as you say, it serves as a kind of interesting, maybe different perspective or counterpoint to the other work that
Mhm.
you referred to, the Lerman films. So,
Yeah,
okay.
like, it definitely makes you feel like, oh, being involved with an ultra famous person could kinda be a very lonely experience. 'Cause, like,
Mm.
all the scenes where she's just standing around in Graceland, but she's all by herself, and she can't even really socialize with other people that work in the house or she'll get scolded because it's, like, I don't know, it's supposed to be separate for some reason, so you just see her as being kind of very bored and isolated and cut off.
Mm.
Um, and I'm sure a lot of people that are involved with someone ultra famous probably go through something similar to this. So it's kind of a little bit of a meditation on that. But, like, I feel like the movie helps you understand, like, why she would have gotten attracted to Elvis in the first, you know, to begin with and ended up marrying him and having a kid with him, why she would have maybe stayed with him for the amount of time she did, and then ultimately it kinda makes sense why she would have left. So it kinda
Mm.
makes you and I guess it's based on Priscilla Presley's book on her relationship with Elvis, and she was like a executive producer for the film. So it's probably, like, the closest movie we're gonna get to what their relationship was like, maybe? I mean, I know Elvis isn't alive anymore, so he can't, like, refute anything that was portrayed, but
Mm. Oh, well, this is okay. I'm gonna have to see if I can try to watch some of these films here. I guess it's
yeah,
um,
and the movie I'm really interested to see is Saltburn, the new
oh
Emerald
yes,
movie, that's been getting a lot of great reviews, and then there's also the new, Aki Kaurismäki movie,
yes,
I
yes.
think called Fallen Leaves, but it's not playing here yet, but as soon as it's playing, I definitely wanna see that as soon as possible. So that's what I'm looking forward to seeing.
Oh, well done, Amy. Thank you so much for that. Thank you. I very much appreciate that. Um, uh, oh my goodness, time flies. Time flies when one is having such a great time talking with a wonderful film enthusiast such as yourself. I had such a great time today, Amy, and I want to say thank you so much for just sitting down and offering a little bit of your time. I know you're very busy, but just offering a little bit of your time and great insight into your approach to these films, such as the works of Lynch and others. I really want to thank you for this, and I hope that we can continue this, our conversations, both online and offline, in terms of further observations and perspectives about films and recommendations and the like. I really had a great time, Amy. Thank you so much
Well,
for
thanks
this.
for having me. Oh, also, another thing I'll be watching is which I just
Oh,
got
when did you? Oh my gosh, I have to go and get my copy. Oh my goodness. Okay.
I just got it online. So yeah, and I have some other stuff coming. I have this La Ceremonie, I think is coming today too, that Isabelle Huppert movie that I love.
Oh,
So
yes, that's right. Those are the new releases today because we're recording this on the Tuesday when those titles are being released. So I'm going to actually go to the Barnes and Noble later today to try to see if
oh
they have
cool.
copies. But before we end, I also want to say thank you so much. I know we had, and I hope you don't mind me just bringing this up very briefly, but I know we had spoken about a very interesting film, which is this one, right? Which was, remember this?
Oh yeah, right.
Yes, and this I had seen for the first time, thanks to this Criterion or Janus Contemporaries release, I should say,
Hmm.
and I found it to be an incredible work, very moving for a number of reasons, which I think you've also shared in your lovely comment about your own watch of this work. So I just want to say thank you very much for always responding to things that I might say about a work and adding so much depth and your own special and great insight into these works about, for instance, this work and others. I just want to say thank you so much. Truly, it's been a true pleasure to be able to get to know your perspectives on these works. Thank you.
Oh, likewise, yeah. I really appreciate all the videos you make and the thorough discussions you do of
Not
so
at all.
many different interesting films.
Not at
But
all. I
yeah,
want
it's
to say
great.
thank you.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Yeah, it was fun to kind of expound on some of these things
Oh,
that I
and oh, I'm sorry. I keep interrupting you. I
uh,
apologize. I sincerely apologize. I don't mean to do that. I
my
apologize.
voice tends to kind of just drop off. But yeah, I don't usually just sit and talk to somebody for an hour about film, so it was pretty fun for me too.
Truly, this was a great honor and privilege for me. So thank you so much for taking the time, Amy, to stop by. I very much appreciate it. And let us continue these conversations going forward. And if ever you have any recommendations for films for me or for anyone, please let us know anytime. You know, we would truly benefit. Always, every time we benefit from your great insight and perspective, and we will continue to do so. So, Amy, thank you so much. It's been a real honor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and have a great day in LA.
Thank you, and you in San Francisco. So, thank you so much.
Okay, all right, bye bye.